Well, hello, everyone. We are so excited to be with you today, and welcome to Beyond Sunday from King of Kings. And I'm excited because we're here with Pastor Mark and Sharon Zehnder, and we are taking last week's series beginning of Legacy and going deeper with the questions, and then even bringing you, Sharon, in to hear all the thoughts that you have, your perspective, and then also, of course, any corrections from what was shared on the stage.
Yeah, this is a great moment because pastors' wives, we don't get the microphone, so I'm very honored to be here.
Have at it, baby.
Here we
Let's
go.
have fun.
This is going to be fun. And once again, too, we'd invite you to like and share this as well. Let this get out there because this is really a very important topic of our legacy. And Mark, you shared a little bit about your grandfather and your father and what they shared with you, which was to preach the gospel and love the people. And boy, you both have done that. I'd be curious, Sharon, just can you share a little bit about Mark's dad and that whole legacy?
I met Mark's parents, and I think I was especially drawn to his mom. The thing I remember about Arlene, and she's still living, she would make every person feel special. She kind of would learn something about you so that when you came to visit with her, she would either have your favorite cookies or a favorite snack or something. And she did it with grandkids too. But I noticed that right away. I felt a very unconditional love from his parents, and they liked me right away. I think they were comparing me to other people that he had in his life.
Oh, wow. Wow.
No, we just, I liked them, and they liked, it was good. Yeah. And of course, Mark and I, we knew pretty soon after we started dating that we wanted to be married to each other. So, I knew these were going to be people that were in my life, and I loved his whole family. So his dad, what I loved about his dad is that, boy, did he preach the gospel. And he was a very humble man. I love the conversations. If you got up early, Dadsy was always up. And he'd be in the kitchen, making eggs or something. And that's where we'd have our theological talks.
He loved that.
And he did. He did it with whoever was there. And I always liked that kind of thing with him. And just a deep he was just himself. He was just very real.
I was just telling somebody the other day that when we'd call home, Mom was the one that could talk for an hour. Dad, it was like, you got 2 minutes. He wasn't a conversationalist on the phone. But man, if you sat at the breakfast table, kind of before everybody else was up too, I looked forward to that. When I was on vacation, if I woke up early in the morning, normally if I was anywhere else, I'd just roll over and go back to bed. But I knew my dad was upstairs waiting. So I'd make it a point to get up there, and we had some of our best conversations up there.
Sharon, you have invested so much love and the gospel with pastors' wives, with my own wife, but with also when I was in Macomb with my predecessor's wife, Liz. Your reputation and love for wives is lives out that same purpose, which is to preach the gospel and to love people. Can you just share a little bit about that passion and where that came from? And
yeah, thank you, first of all. And I love Lori, your wife. Mark and I were blessed to be able to, when we came to our church in Tennessee, and then here at King of Kings, we were blessed to see the larger church, and it put us in positions where we were exposed to other pastors and wives at the same, doing the same type of ministry at larger churches. And that put me in a position where I was on staff with Pastoral Leadership Institute. And my role was specifically working with the wives for retreats, but working with the gal in charge of it, Diane, who was over the whole women's program. And when Jackie Esch started the women's program, we had very distinct, what do you call them? Not goals, but these are the things we're trying to do. With anything that starts, you want to have a target of what you're going for. And one of those things is, as you know, Greg, pastors' wives are all different. Some of them, they know they're marrying a pastor when they become a pastor's wife. Some of them, it's a career change and all of a sudden they're a pastor's wife. And some of them have come from different backgrounds. So every pastor's wife looks different. And so one of the things as being a part of that Pastoral Leadership Institute was just helping every woman to be very solid with who God called her to be, uniquely different. You don't have to be somebody else's, you don't have to fill their footsteps. Just be yourself, and helping them, through Bible studies and just a lot of work, to help them know that if they didn't know it. And because from there, then they can be that good support, for their husband, and not get caught in what does everybody expect me to do? Just to be yourself and to be a support for your husband and who God's uniquely called you to be. So it works really well. But, if you don't have those things in place, and I know I learned this at our first church, trying to just be who they wanted me to be and trying different things and realizing, that's not me. And, there were some great areas, but there were other areas that I told Mark, I'm never going to do that again because it wasn't me.
Yeah, I think it's safe to talk about the quilting group at our first church, because none of them possibly could be alive still. That was 40 years ago, and they were 90.
Yeah.
So anyway,
one of several things. But my
just
point is to
just be there.
Yeah, it was a small congregation and very rural, and I was blessed to be able to know them. But it's a process to figure that out. So yeah, coming alongside pastors' wives and just helping them to be who they are called to be. I think that's really important.
If I could add to that, I think, so like when I was playing sports and I was on the floor or on the court or on the field, I could do something about it. I could make a catch. I could throw a pass. I could make a basket. But when I'm in the stands watching, and you and I know how painful it is watching our sports teams, right? So anyway, you can't do anything.
Whole another podcast.
Yeah, you can't do anything. And I think that's a lot of times where pastors' wives are. Their husbands, they see what's going on, but they see what they deal with. And other than loving him and praying, there's not a lot they can do. And that would be really hard.
Yeah.
The topic of triangulation that I think happens so easily, and I'm so guilty of it, and I know better. But, when someone can't get to the pastor, a lot of times they go through the pastor's wife, and, that can create a lot of stress. And I mean, I know I've done it. We've navigated through it, but, just being educated about that, how dangerous that is when somebody's not trying to go directly through it's not my job to be the pastor, but, I have my gifts are encouragement and caring. And so, if somebody comes to me, it's hard for me to, you're going to have to talk to him about that.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit then about, because we did talk about how to navigate through the valleys, and then also a little bit of the mountaintops. And you guys have been through valleys in ministry, and then have certainly been on mountaintops. Your reputation and legacy, and just what's known about King of Kings, and the impact and influence is worldwide. So, Mark, you shared a little bit in the valleys of walking with Jesus and knowing He's always there with you through those valley parts. Can you go a little deeper of just when we're in the valleys of, and when we're in the valleys, I think we feel alone, we feel isolated. That's where Satan says God's not even here, right? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Sunday, I had talked about how going through some of those valleys early on helped me to learn the venting and lamenting phase of life, where there are just sometimes you just have to say, this really stinks, and this is really hard, and I don't like it. My issue was that time could go on too long. And so, Sharon was, I think if we look back on our 40 plus years of marriage, there was one time, right? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. There was one time when we're in the valley and we were not safe for each other, because I would deal with all the really cruddy stuff that was going on all during the day and even into the night with meetings. And I'd come home and Sharon would want to talk about it. And it was like, oh, it's the last thing I want to do is talk about it more. And that didn't help her at all. And I didn't have the wherewithal to realize I need to talk with her for her sake, not mine. But I just like I was worn out. So we started missing each other. And I think Sharon was saying we weren't safe for each other. We had to find somebody outside of ourselves to talk to, and then get counseling, because it was so hard. We were okay, with each other. We just weren't doing okay with all the stuff that was swirling around us.
If I remember right, we didn't get counseling about that. There were other times that we got counseling.
But so much, so I forget. No, that's not awful true. That's true some, yeah. Oh,
I'm a big proponent of counseling, but I don't think it was that. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So in those valleys, what I hear you saying is that Satan not only was working on, hey, where is God? God's not even here, but also even further isolating. And now attacking even your own marriage of, hey, you know what? I love you, but I'm just done. And you're kind of going, hey, I'm your partner. I want to, how can I pray? How can I talk? How can we? And there was the isolation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she wasn't just experiencing our relationship and how we were dealing with it and wanting to help me, though she's always wanted to help me. She had her own individual pain. Mm. She was experiencing what the members of the church were experiencing, just as a person herself.
Yeah. Can I go into that from my perspective? Please. So just as he described his, and we've been through several of them, but this one was more intense than the other. And it was such a confusing time. And where we would normally have each other, because it was so confusing, we weren't safe for each other. And just like you get the news, things are rapidly changing. It was a season of a lot of that. And he was maxed out. And so it was during, you don't know sometimes you have faith until it gets tested. And this is where I didn't have anybody but the Lord. Mm. And I dug in deep with the Lord. And the odd thing is he was quiet. Normally he'd speak to me through the scriptures. And I was hurting so badly, and he was so quiet. And and maybe I don't even remember if it was 2 or 3 weeks, but it felt like hell, because the world was changing all around me, and I didn't have Mark, and I couldn't talk to anybody else, and God was just quiet. And then I didn't know anything else to do, though, except to continue in reading. I kind of had my daily routine, and I'm just calling out to the Lord, and there's just so quiet. And then one day he broke through, and it was so intimate that it changed my life. And it actually, I think, set me up for the ministry that I did in the community with grief, because he spoke so loud and he spoke so clear. And it was exactly what I needed, because I felt like, I felt like he was there, but I didn't know where else to go. And he spoke so clearly to me that I was okay. I mean, I was okay to keep fighting. And my mantra was just take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. Take every thought captive, make it obedient to Christ. I mean, there was so much crud and so much unsafe stuff and confusing stuff that all I could do was just take every thought captive and make it obedient to Christ, trying to keep my mind out of the gutter. But there was an intimacy that, I had never had with the Lord before that. And he came through. And it's just so curious to me that he waited. But that was a big part, I think, of what I needed at that time, to know, that he's just not somebody I control with, just call out and he's going to answer me every single time with what exactly I think I need. He knew exactly what I needed, and he did it at just the right time.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for that, just raw honesty and care. I think those valleys are things too that a lot of times, especially as we see pastors and wives of larger churches, that I think people just don't realize what sometimes has gone through. But there are mountaintops that we get to, and my gosh, such mountaintops. I mean, I just think of just so many that I know of, and there's so many more. Your hearts for the world and missions of the world, Africa. What is it, Mark? You sent 250,000 books?
It was actually almost 400,000.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for being so low. Sorry about that.
Well, the goal was 1 million. Uma said, you guys can surely come up with 1 million books for us.
1 million
So
books.
we-
So you got
like,
400,000.
we came shy of 1 million, but 400,000. Yeah.
So here at King of Kings, there's about 100 or so thousand square feet in kind of what we call beyond the wall, and every space has a name, and one area is called Africa.
Yeah.
And that's a large space, and it's called Africa, and really began naming everything after different countries,
Right.
because that's where you stored.
That's
the
where
books.
those books stayed for a long time till they ended up on the huge containers and crossing the ocean.
Yeah, and that was, I remember you sharing with me that you were like, okay, you're so focused on gathering all the books, and so you just reached out to everyone and anyone and said, if you have theological books, come.
Well, so here's the funny part of it. So we were in Tennessee at the time at our church in Tennessee. And so Uma came to me and Brad, pastor here at King of Kings, and with this dream. And I looked at Brad, and Brad looked at me, and he said, well, we've got the space to store it if you can get the books. It's like, okay. So I was in charge of getting the word out to the United States that we're collecting books. So people just started shipping books here. And
And then you thought,
but so we think of that and we think, okay, that's a lot of books. But what we don't know, what the average person doesn't know, is what would happen when a pastor over there got a book. That pastor, most of them had Bibles. Most of them, not all of them. They're pastors. They didn't all have Bibles in some of the places where we were. And they may have had a hymnal, And that was it. That was it. So if they had a book on leadership or a book on how to start small groups or a book on, whatever, it was, they would just weep. They would cry out of like, this is the greatest gift that I've ever gotten. Mm. So that's when we saw the amazing impact of it. It was, Africa has a lot of mountaintop memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, shipping 400,000 books is no small feat.
No, it wasn't a small feat. And if it wasn't for Ken Jasperson, I don't know that it would have happened.
Wow.
I don't even, gosh, that's so far back. I don't remember the many details about it. But I do know that Ken was on the phone a lot. And I think we talked with Orphan Grain Train. We talked with other people in the transportation industry to try to figure out how to do it. And it was like, well, we can get them on there and it'll be like 6 months and they'll be there. It's like, what?
Wow.
Yeah. There was no supply chain issue. I don't know even back then.
So that's a mountaintop. You have the mountaintop of, Easter at the Baxter, right? Easter services in an arena before arenas were even considered something that you would have a church in. You have a church in a warehouse, which was before even churches were considered that you would ever even think of doing that, right off of a freeway. Then you have Pastoral Leadership Institute that you both have just poured so much out. Also, both of you have just cared for pastors and wives of churches of larger sizes within our denomination. There's so many mountaintops there. And I remember listening recently to a podcast by Carey Nieuwhof, and he said who he was interviewing said the biggest threat to any ministry is pride and ego. And I know for me, when I'm on the mountaintops is when I hear, as you said, I resonated with that, where Satan says, you didn't even need God, way to go.
Yeah.
How do you, the shadow that you both have casted is long, but you've also remained in that, saying it's not your shadow, it's the shadow of Jesus. Just talk a little bit through that, because that's not something that's easily done, and not something that just happens.
I can think of a lot of things to say to that, but I think it all starts with. But I know the truth. I know who I am. I know my failures. I know my weaknesses. I know my sin. I know them too. Oh boy. Wow.
No,
we're going to go that way.
It's funny, but it's not funny. You know what I mean?
Of course.
We both know that.
Yeah, we know. Yeah. So, gosh, we were at a wedding reception a few months ago. And the bride-to-be, or was it before or after? I can't remember before or after, but the bride was talking about me and Sharon. And she was talking about these giants, these spiritual giants. And I'm like looking around who's she talking about? And she's talking about us. And I was like, that is not something that I think I am. I'm not. And maybe that's why God allows the valleys, because when we're on the mountaintop, we remember how bad it was to be there. And I think I always tried to say, I want to live in the middle of that. I don't want to live for too long on the mountaintop or too long in the valley. I kind of want to be in the middle. And don't let your highs get too high. Don't let your lows get too low. Just try to find your way into the middle, because that's a safer place to be. Mm-hmm. And also, Greg, my grandpa and my dad, once again, instilled that in me, what I said Sunday. Dad would say, good sermon, but don't let it go to your head, because he knew how dangerous pride is. Pride goes before the fall. So.
Yeah. And I mean, my background, I'm a I probably in my early years was a perfectionist, striving to be, and learning, as I got older, the sin of that, the pride of that, and I mean, people that know us, what you see is kind of what you get. We're not that much different, at home. But Mark knows my yucky sides. I know his yucky sides, but we also know our strength sides. And, that God would work through us.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It really, that the good can come out, because we know our yucky sides. And, both of us can get into pride, I think just because of who our personalities are. We're very different, but yet we have our own approach to that. And so we're both good at knocking it down in each other in I think a good and godly way. I think we spot it. You spot what you have in yourself. And when you can know that, my goodness, this is everybody's sin issue, it's just we all need help,
Yeah.
So we just want to be vessels God flows through, that in spite of the things that aren't good, there are good things in each one of us. It's the Holy Spirit within us. And that's what we want people to be ministered to is whatever it looks like through Mark and Sharon. They're getting God. They're not getting Mark and Sharon. That's what we want.
Yeah. The other thing that comes to mind is like, if you sit in the seat of lead pastor at a large church, there's a part of you that really likes to be out front. Like, when the lights go on, it's fun.
Yeah, it's game time.
Because God wired you that way, and you're using the gift. It's like Eric Liddell, who, when he raced, said something like, "When I race, I feel the glory of God," or something cool like that. There were times when, on Easter morning at one of the arenas, the guys would get around and pray for me, and then after they would pray for me, I would just get somewhere and I would say to myself, "I was born for this. I was born for this moment. God gave me the gifts. So God, come on, let's go." And that's why the pride thing is so tricky, though, because it's really close. It's right next to you. But at the same time, that's how God made us, and it's so fun.
It's uncanny almost how similar. You and I have the same Enneagrams.
Me too.
And are very much alike within our strength finders, all those types of things. And you and my wife are same Enneagrams, perfectionists, all those types of things. And, it's really interesting. I'm thankful that I have the perfectionist wife, because I do go home from Sunday game time like, we killed it. That was great. I don't ask my wife, "What'd you think of church?" Because
you're going to get
I
it.
get the perfectionist. Yeah. She
Right.
gives it to me regardless.
Right. You're going to get it.
I don't.
In fact, when you don't get it, that's when you know, oh,
Yeah.
shoot.
Yeah.
It
Right.
wasn't so good, was it?
Yeah. Yeah. She and boy, I need that.
Yeah.
And
For
that's
sure.
that reminder. And so it's that thankfulness, right? Because when you have when you have that perfectionist with you, right, there's always, because we're sinners, there's always a gap. There's always a miss. There's always a spot, right? But may Christ be glorified. So you guys have been married for 45 years. Wow. And that's just congratulations. And I just first thank you, because I just think younger and younger generations, due to the fact that A, marriages are happening later in life, and then B, marriage is so conditional now. There will be less and less people celebrating those major milestones. So I want to just uplift and honor that. Talk a little bit with us about how your marriage and just the legacy of your marriage and navigating. It's hard. And you said this, during some valleys, and I know you've shared this, you were at the church for 24 hours. It was, and there's stress on that. And I've said, Satan attacks us. Then if he can't get to us, he goes after our marriages, because those are pictures of Christ and his love for the church. So just share with us just some things about how we can navigate marriage well.
I know Mark talked a little bit about this on Sunday, but I just want to also come at it from the perspective of having accountability people and safe people because I've had a prayer partner for almost, not quite the first year, but, a lot of years.
28 years here.
Yeah. And that has been a very good thing in our marriage as well, because I trust this person for those kinds of things that, sometimes I just need someone to be able to vent to, or maybe I need their input. And then, of course, the prayers. We've had, as Mark talked about, we've had our intercessors that I am in total agreement that we wouldn't have made it as a couple probably, or, for sure at the church during some of those times, because of the warfare that was going on and how intense that can be at times. So I think those things have, I can't say how important having prayer support is, wherever that comes from, and that accountability. I know Mark's had that at different levels in different ways over the years. And then the other thing is, we have invested in our marriage over the years. We've taken retreats. We've done different things. I'm a big believer in that, in setting aside time to, if it's not a structured marriage thing, I like to plan, and I like to, just do different things. So, just fashioning different things that cause us to have to talk about things that we wouldn't maybe talk about. And then, as Mark, as Mark mentioned, we've had conversations where we've had to learn how to communicate, more effectively, where we were talking to each other, but we were missing each other, and just perfecting that art of communication, which can be done through books and Bible studies and things like that. So that's kind of my extra that I wanted, to add into that. We've invested.
Yeah. Yeah, I think other than beyond what I said on Sunday about this, I remember when we were about to get married, my dad, which by now should be obvious, is a pastor, was a pastor. He said, well, I'll marry you, but I'm not going to do the counseling. Well, then he did counseling with us all the time, but it wasn't formal, And I do remember one time when he said something like, he said two things. The Bible talks about not going to bed at night with anger. Get it settled before you go to bed. And he said, so there are times when you got an issue, but it's not a huge issue, and you just say, we need to talk about this, tomorrow, and you can both agree. But there are some times when it's just like, no, tomorrow, we got to do something, we got to talk this out. And he also said the worst thing that you can do with words is call somebody a name. I still remember that. You can say nasty things and it's not good, but ultimately the other person might be able to get over that. But when you call them a name, that does something that is very injurious. Injurious? Is that a word?
It is now.
It hurts a lot. And I think that I can probably count on one hand, thankfully, no more than one hand, times when, I'm not going to say, speak for Sharon, but speak for me, where I've done that. And it was like, oh gosh, that as soon as it came out, it was like, oh, that's going to hurt. That pain's going to last for a long time. So just to be super careful with our words and our communication. And I think we have a pretty good grasp of good communication. I think we're good at it.
Well, the other thing I think is that's so important is I've always known from the beginning Mark respects me. And he loves me, but I've always known he respects me. And no matter how ugly it gets or, which, I mean, we've had lots of ugly moments in our marriage, but I always know he respects me and loves me, even when it's rough. And I think he knows that of me too. We're committed to each other. So
we want the best. We want the best for each other. We want to be the best for each other. So I think we try to draw that out. The other thing about our family is that laughter is just a huge joy, and laughter is huge.
That's why I married him. He made me laugh.
Yeah, you've said that. And you've also said that in times in our family where there was a little stress or a little tension, that I had this way that nobody else in the family had to be able to bring some levity to it. That just diffused the situation. And I remember one of the times we were in the counselor's office, and that was for one of the issues with the kids. And he just said, your job is to go home. And our child was with us. Your job is to go home and laugh for 1 minute, whether you feel like it or not. 1 minute, set the timer, and just start laughing. And so it'd be like, ha, 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 looking at each other like, ha, 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 ha. And then there was a moment where it just shifted into, it became real laughter. That was one of the best.
It's called therapeutic laughter. You can Google it.
Yeah.
Didn't know it at the time, but that's what it's called.
But it actually works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Raising kids is hard. I'm in a stage with a elementary school kid and who's a preteen-ish, and then a teenager as well. And but the greatest dream we have as parents is that our children know and love Jesus. And there's a release of that. We don't have control over that. Faith is by the Holy Spirit. And, but we still pray and we still do some things. Can you talk about, just some faith formation for kids and, as a parent who's looking, to say, man, here's the dream, that I want. I want my children to love Jesus. I want my children to love the church. And we know many pastors' children some don't love Jesus, but some love Jesus, but most don't love the church. Or if they do, there's a resentment, on that. And so, can you just share a little bit for us about that?
Yeah, I don't envy what you are having to do that we had to do, 30 some years ago. I think it's gotten more challenging and tricky because of the outside influences and just the control over some of that. But I think that the most important thing, especially if you're in a church family, is that you're no different to the kids than you are, to the people in the congregation. And that they see you as a flawed person, a flawed parent at times. You're able to say, I'm sorry, when you mess up, but you're also able to hold them accountable. Mark and I will be the first ones to tell you that, we tried numerous times to do devotionals with our kids. Didn't work real well. And I mean, it just, we didn't do well with that. It was up and down and all over the place. I've been so impressed with Zach's family, though, because we would go to Florida and visit them, and we saw their normal daily routine. They would have devotions because we, actually went there and visited them. they are making it work, and they have been, all along. And I mean, kudos to them, and that's important. But what's more important is that you live out what those devotions talk about. And so that you're just living that life that, you know what, we're not perfect people. We're not perfect parents. We have some great things, though, because of who we are in Christ, and that they get that. They get the fun, they get the, the joys, but, there's accountability. I don't know what you want to add.
My heart feels for Christian parents who did all the right things, and they now have adult kids that have wandered away. Forget about whether it's pastor and wife, pastor's kids, just people in general. And my heart goes out to them because we can only do what God calls us to do. And then there is this thing called prayer where we just keep on praying for these kids, even when they're 40 years old. Or
60 or
whatever, how our adult kids, we still, and just trust that God's got them. And many of them do come back. In college, I wasn't as close to the Lord as I was when I was at home or after college. Those were hard years until, of course, God brought me Sharon. Then it was all straightened out. Right. But if she would have met me the first year, we wouldn't be together. Let's put it that way. But so, yeah, my heart goes out to parents. I just want to say, just keep praying and keep doing the things that you're doing, talking about God. We didn't do great in formal decisions, but I think our conversation was always about God. We brought spiritual things into normal everyday conversations. And of course, we would say the prayers in the morning, prayers at bed, and prayers at meal times. And yeah. Yeah.
I think, the church is no different than normal people. It's made up of people that need a savior, and you don't talk in those terms, but when they just see that the church makes mistakes, there's ups and downs in the church, I think, especially in pastors' families, that helps them to not hold that against the church, because there can be extreme wounding there, and so just being able to talk with them about that at the age appropriateness. And, I think as long as the pastor and their wife are at a point where we need help with this, even to tell the kids, this is a hard thing going on in the church and we need some help with it, rather than acting like, that way the church isn't the enemy. What is so confusing, I think, so often, and where unforgiveness comes in, and it's such a trap of the enemy, and it's true with kids, it's true with couples, is we take our eyes off of who the real enemy is. The real enemy is always Satan. It's not each other. And yet we can be deeply wounded by people within the church. And so when the talk at home is about something about Christians and what they've done wrong, and when a parent can redirect that, but that there go I, but by the grace of God, we're all, and we need to pray for people. They're not the enemy. The enemy is always trying to take the church down. He's always trying to take Christians down. And so I think when that can be clarified and age appropriate, for kids, because then they're going to be drawn to their Savior. They're not going to pull away from God, because, God didn't make this happen the way it was supposed to happen or something like that, if that makes sense.
Just to add back to the pastor and wife kid thing, if there's anything I would say to a pastor that's about to start raising kids, or a pastor that's married, I would say, remember what Jesus said. You're to love your bride. You're not to love the church. Jesus loves the church. Pastor, you don't need to, as much as I love people and I love the church, I'm not called to be the principal lover of the church. I'm called to love my wife. And if I do that, the kids see that. I've always said the best thing I did for my kids was I love Sharon. Absolutely the best thing I did. And they knew that. They also knew that they couldn't get us apart. We were always going to be in the same spot no matter what. Even if we disagree, we'd figure out how to agree, and then we'd have one word, right? So if a wife feels as though her husband is married to the church, he has a mistress, she's going to resent the church. He's got a mistress. Like, how do the kids feel if they know their dad has a mistress? They're not going to like the mistress either. So they're all going to have this thing. I don't like the church at all because the church has taken my dad away from my mom and me. So that would be what I'd specifically say. But I'd say the same thing to men who work, right? Like, don't make your career. You only got your kids for 18 years ish at home. You know, do your big fun stuff with work. I mean, work hard, but be home. Take care of your kids. Take care of your wife.
Yeah.
And the same for women. I mean,
Yes.
women they can fall into the exact same trap of, where the work or other things become, more important than that, marriage relationship or the kids. Juggling all of that. It's
I think
hard.
that's great right now too about where we are is that I don't have to figure out, now that all my kids are gone, I don't have to figure out how to love her. We're getting ready to go into our retirement years, and we don't have to back up and do a lot of work to get ready. We're ready, and that's fun.
Awesome. Well, what I really value is, and I want everyone to at least hear this. You're not just sharing words. Like you live this out and you set this up, and I'm a benefactor of that. I mean, I had a thought before I came here to King of Kings. I had the thought of, to reach more people, to do more things. The nature of just a large church, because I was in one, was I'm not home. And candidly, before I got here, I was 6 nights out of the week not home. And, the kids, Lori did dinner on her own with the kids and all those things. And I would do leftovers and get home 7:30, 8 o'clock, say goodnight. Wasn't home. And when I came here, that wasn't the rhythm, wasn't the expectation. And what it taught me was you don't have to sacrifice in order to reach more people. It's building a system that says, hey, here's just a normal, and now with the exception of one night a month, I'm home every night. And, and that was, when we came here, that was kind of an agreement Lori and I had, was to say, okay, you be home. And then she got what she wished for. And I think sometimes she'd wish I would be gone.
Don't you need more meetings at church?
so no, but it really, and I think that's a false dichotomy that's up there. Right. Or that especially as a pastor, or even a worker in a career industry, right? I have to do these things in order for my job to be successful or my job to be done well. And it's not. I mean, and so I really appreciate that, because it's not just words from you two. And I just got to say thank you, because my marriage, my kids, Tessa doesn't remember that I'm not home now. She just remembers, oh, Dad's always here.
Praise God.
So yeah.
Leroy will tell you, because we talk about this all the time. When he first got here, I said, there's a couple things you need to know. One of them for sure is this: you'll never get it all done in a day. Just go home at night and be with your wife and your family. It'll all be waiting for you in the morning. And that's true at a place like this, and a lot of businesses and where people work. It's like, you'll never get it done today. Do the best you can. Mm-hmm. Go home to your family, and then it'll be there waiting for you in the morning.
A question we didn't get to on Sunday that I'd be curious about, and this falls under the love God's people. God's people are all people. And some are difficult people. So how did you guys do that? How did you navigate that? And this isn't just pastor to people. I mean, we now live in a world where we're just always surrounded by difficult people. And Jesus loved difficult people as well. Sometimes it was Peter was being difficult, or James and John, or their mother. So kind of walk us through some of that. How'd you do that? Because you guys have done that well.
Boundaries. If I had to say it in one word, it's learning boundaries. I'm not the savior. Mark's not the savior of people. You could work 24 hours a day and do everything, and still people would be hurting or needing help. And so I think it's finding the boundaries that, and it is so hard because you care. I mean, we're in ministry because we care. And, even what I do, with my work, it's a caring profession. And so to be able to say I can only do so much, and kind of setting those boundaries, and then trusting that the Lord will either, whoever they're referred to or whatever care you're able to give, knowing that's what you have to stop at, and knowing the Lord will take care and build upon that, or work through other people. That's what I would say. You have a different perspective, I'm sure.
So many things I could say about it, but I think I'll start with what I learned a long time ago, which is hurting people hurt people. So if I know someone's going to be coming at me with anger, and it can be bad, like really bad, I just said, God, help me be the person that breaks the cycle of hurting people hurt people. Because this person that's coming at me, and I know it's coming, like I've been there enough to know when this person comes up a little bit closer to me, it's going to come out. So I actually learned a mental thing that I would do. I would put plexiglass in front of me. And
visually.
Well, mentally, obviously, I didn't put the physical plexiglass, but in my
with COVID, you can just
grab it off your desk.
That's what he was doing.
But like literally, I would mentally put that in front of me I'll just say it, as they vomited all of their anger and bitterness and everything at me, and it didn't hit me. And I knew they were hurting. I knew they had to get it out. When you have to throw up, you got to get it out. I knew they had to. Now, afterwards, I had to get cleaned up or get the plexiglass. And I learned that I might be angry too, but if I share my anger back at that person, that's not going to do any good. So I had to go to other people to say, this just happened. That really stinks. So this is where it gets funny and not funny. So this would happen to me. And I would come home and I would talk about what happened. And I would now talk about this person. Say, I can't believe what they did. They did this to me. Like, what? And I'm venting. And Sharon, because she's so, she's such a good person.
This is where we were missing each other.
Her heart is so good. She sees the best in people. So she would start explaining to me why they might have said what they said and how they said it. And and it was like, no. Like, I'm your husband. Like, be on my side, not their side. Call them a jerk, please. So anyway, we learned that. And she's way better at that now too, by the way. She recognizes, and it doesn't happen much anymore. Thank God. Yeah. I mean, now that I think this is one of the reasons, Greg, why you want to make it to 40 plus years in ministry and retire. People stop saying mean things to you. They start saying, everybody's saying, I haven't had a person say a mean thing to me. I probably shouldn't say this, but in a long time, it's like, there's just all nice things now. It's like, wow, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's really helpful. I really, that's really helpful.
Is that the kind of
us.
difficult people you were envisioning, or is it a different type of? Was it more
I think the reality is like, so being in a church, as you guys know, there is no other organization in the world like this, right? In the business world, if your customer doesn't like anything anymore, they might fire an email, but then they go and say, I'm taking my business elsewhere, I'm doing something. In the church, if people don't like a direction something's happening, they'll come up and tell you, and then they show up again the next Sunday.
And tell you again.
And tell you again.
2 minutes before you're ready to preach.
Right, yeah. And so or sometimes, and the thing is, and where I really think this is true is we are filled with people, and people of faith are filled with passion. And they're passionate about Jesus. They're also passionate about the way they were raised for Jesus. And so it comes actually from a good place, and it comes from a good intention, but it's kind of like, I mean, sometimes I look and I go, wow, that person just shouldn't send an email. Like they like when you talk to them, you go, that sounds nothing like what your email sounded like.
Yeah.
And then some people, I just think, man, you should have just ran that through someone else first, because then, but it's just, we all have that. And I have that. I mean, we all do that. We get, you get to a spot where you just think, this is the way I love it, right? It's kind of like what we talked about when I first got here, Mark, and your gym changed, right? And then, and you're like, okay, I understand this. Like they're changing my gym.
They just changed it again. I left that gym. So anyways, so I think that's just, but what I've always seen is from you, and even with pastors, I think too, right? Because even as pastors, especially in our denomination, where I would say we actually don't have a whole lot of healthy pastors who know how to deal with conflict, change, and stuff in our own system. Even we get letters from pastors and who are difficult people, right? Like, how dare you do it this way? Wait a minute, right? What has made, as long as we're preaching the gospel, staying true to our beliefs about who Jesus is, there's a lot of adiaphora and a lot of gray, but we're becoming more and more in a world where there's no more gray. It's just my way or the highway. And so I just think you guys have really shown great ability to navigate difficulty. And I think that's something important in our world.
That's amazing.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some kind of fun questions here to wrap up today. Mark, I loved what you said for what you would tell your 20-year-old self. And so for those who weren't here Sunday, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Don't stop pursuing her.
Yeah.
Because when I was 19, I saw this beautiful blonde at Concordia, Ann Arbor, and I began the pursuit. I was going to conquer her. I was going to convince her that she should be my wife. And I was successful in that. But it's like what guys can do is like, after that, then they've accomplished their job. And it's like, man, don't just always keep on pursuing her, keep on wooing her, keep on loving her, keep on blessing her, keep on treating her like a queen. And the longer that we have together, the more, I can't imagine, and I don't even want to think about it, because we know that life does at some point come to an end, and one of us is going to, in all likelihood, if both of us went at the same time, that'd be tough on the kids, but it would be great for us. But anyway, all that said, I just don't want to ever take her for granted. So that's what I'd tell my 20-year-old self.
Sharon, I'm going to ask you 2 questions on this. So the first one, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
boy, that was just a season of really getting to know each other, and I mean, just a lot of fun for us. And so just enjoying that season of life. That was, just the time that we had investing in other friendships and everything too. Just enjoy each other.
Okay, second question for you, and this just will be, what would you tell 20-year-old Mark?
Let's see. 20-year-old Mark. Where were we when we were just
We would have been
just
at
getting
Ann Arbor.
married, and yeah.
No, we weren't married till 97.
Okay, so
We were still in Ann Arbor at school.
20-year-old Mark. I
Can't
would
really actually say on this podcast what you'd really say. So come up with a different answer than that. I can think of 3 things you can say easy.
remember how important your girlfriend is compared to your friends.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Yes.
Yeah, because he was still in that, friends part with seminary and it was college, I guess, at that point.
Yeah,
and and just juggling both
You could have
those.
said that to me. I don't think it had done any good, but that's all right.
So we didn't get to this, Mark. What would you have said to your 30-year-old self, your 30s, looking back at someone in their 30s?
Yeah,
What would you
it's
tell them?
a little bit of touching on what I said before is like when I was 30, we were just planting our church in Tennessee. It was so exciting. There was exhilaration and adrenaline, and we were adding so many people. Our church in those years was probably the fastest growing church in our denomination. And it was fun, and I loved it, and I got swept up into it to the point that I would say to my 30-year-old self, be more present at home.
That's good.
I may have been home, but I wasn't there. My body might have been there, but I wasn't there. And Sharon had 2 little boys, 4 and 2, I suppose it would have been at the time, and I left her alone too much.
Sharon, what would you tell your 30s or someone in their 30s today?
As I'm thinking of what happened in our lives, I mean, I would never have dreamed we'd be here at that point. I just was picturing, just normal ministry. And I would say watch for the Kairos moments, because there were very significant things that happened in his life, and that affected me as well, that were turning points for us in ministry. And it's not just ministry that I'm talking about Kairos moments. Kairos moments it's that Greek word for time. And when Kairos moments happen, those are the things where when Kairos happens, everything changes afterwards. But that thing has to happen for everything else to change. And so you got to be watching for those times where there's an opportunity that the Lord puts before you. And then whatever choice you make can change the rest of your life. And we have little Kairos moments all the time where we can interact with somebody at Starbucks and say something about our faith, and that can be a Kairos moment for that person. We don't know it sometimes. But there were Kairos moments where Mark, one of our mentors and friends, Kent Hunter, met Mark during that season and talked about getting into a doctorate program. That was a Kairos moment.
It changed everything.
It changed everything. And so watch for those moments and pray for them, because they're very important. When those relationships, those happenings, those Kairos moments happen, they can take a person into a whole different direction than maybe you plan to go, but it's where God wants you to go.
Wow.
That's kind of a deep answer.
That's really good. No, that's really good.
But that was very true during that time.
What would you tell 30-year-old Mark?
Yeah, be home more.
Yeah,
I would agree with Mark.
Yeah, you had a very self-centered season there for a little bit.
Self and God.
But you know what happened?
Uh-oh.
He stayed home with the kids, and we were in rural Arkansas, and he stayed home with the kids and let me go to Little Rock, which was an hour and a half away. And I think I was gone about 4 hours or so, 5. And he came home.
You came home.
Yeah, I came home, sorry. And he said, trying to remember the exact words. I
had no idea.
He did. He said, I had no idea what it felt like to be you. That was the best thing that could happen.
Wow.
Because I was a stay-at-home mom at that time, and it was it was rural and wasn't a lot of opportunity to do a lot, and we didn't have any finances to do anything. And he was just home working with the kids and the day-to-day, and they were normal
What do you mean
kids.
we didn't have any finances?
Well,
I made $19,000 a year, honey.
anyhow, that's what. So what is my answer? Oh, be home more. Yeah,
That's good.
it helped him to do that, to understand my world.
What would you tell someone in their 40s?
Wow. I figured out myself in my 40 when I turned 40, but thinking about 40s, you're in your 40s. What would I tell you? That's the way I can look at this. It's going to be okay. Those girls are going to go from that, especially the teenager who now thinks you don't know anything. A few years from now is going to suddenly realize, oh, I guess you do know some things. So hang in there. Don't give up. Don't lose the faith. Keep loving them. You're going to be all right.
That's good. Sharon, what would you tell someone in their 40s?
What I remember during that period is God's a very redeeming God. So, his ways may be way different, but his heart's always about redemption. And what I said before, remember who the real enemy is. It's not people. It's never people.
What would you tell 40-year-old Mark?
I'm really proud of you. You weathered through some tough stuff with the Lord, and you listened to him.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. What are you going to tell your 85-year-old self?
Well, I already talked about that
On Sunday. But maybe someone hasn't heard us.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, I said 2 things on Sunday. One, I was like, come on, get up. Let's go shoot our age, which is for a golfer. For those that don't golf, what that means is your score would be your age. So, like right now, I'm 67 years old, and the best round of golf I ever shot was 69, and that's when I was in my 30s. So I couldn't come close to that now. But when I'm 77 or 85, perhaps, maybe that day I'll wake up and go shoot my age again. But what was my serious answer was you still can make a contribution. Yeah. You still have influence. You still have a purpose. So live it out.
That's good. Sharon, what do you think you'll tell your 85-year-old self?
Oh, just enjoy family, the laughter and the closeness that you can have with family. More children are a blessing from the Lord, the grandchildren, and just that would be my fun answer. And my serious answer would probably be, it's getting closer. Mm. And I can't wait.
Yeah.
And what do you think you're going to tell Mark when he's 85?
What would I tell you when you're 85? Let's just keep having fun.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Guys, this has been so rich for me, and I know for anyone that's watching or listening this. And so thank you for just your openness, your honesty, your vulnerability, your laughter, and your fun. And from the bottom of my heart, too, thank you for your friendship. Love you guys. Like and share this with someone, and continue living out your legacy.